Hey YouTube, Girsu here. Today for you guys, I'm going to be showing you my Satellarknight deck profile. This used to be back in the day when I was playing in the Duelist Alliance format. This was my deck of choice between the trifecta of Burning Abyss, Shaddolls, Tellarknights, and I guess you can kind of say like Cleese maybe. But I didn't really like Cleese all too much. I didn't think that really stood too much of a chance against especially Shaddolls. But yeah, this is kind of like a modernized version of this deck. It's definitely nowhere near as good as it used to be for sure. And it's more or less just kind of like trap the deck, which is totally fine with me because that's, obviously how the deck is played. So you're really relying on cards like Deneb and stuff like that to give you your pluses. And cards like Travere are still pretty good to be able to bounce the entire field and rip a card from your opponent's hand. So yeah, let's get into the deck profile, guys. This is one of my favorite decks from the old school era, so I'm pretty happy to show it to you. So first, we're going to start off with the best monster in the deck. That is triple Satellarknight Deneb. Basically, Deneb is your Stratos for Tellarknights. When he's summoned, doesn't matter if he's flip summoned, normal summoned, or special summoned, you get to add a Tellarknight monster from your deck to your hand. So this is pretty key for being able to keep your hand advantage up and keep your monsters and keep your Altairs in your hand, because Altair is like definitely the best extender in this deck. So yeah, I definitely want to play triple Deneb. It's obviously the best normal summon you could really ask for. Next, you got the second best, I guess. Best extender at least. That's triple Satellarknight Altair. Basically, he's your Coach Soldier Wolfbark. When he's summoned, he revives another Tellarknight from your grave. And he can even revive your Exceed monster from the graveyard too. But it has to be revived in defense position. And then you are only able to attack with Tellarknight monsters for the rest of the turn, which isn't a huge thing because 9 times out of 10, you're actually going to be using this card on your opponent's turn with cards like Call of the Haunted or Travere to revive on your opponent's turn when he gets destroyed. So that hindrance isn't really too bad. So triple Altair, it's good for your rank 4 plays. The good thing is he doesn't lock you out of summoning anything else but Tellarknights, so only attacking. So then you got triple Anugalai. This is your Foolish Barrel. This is like a kind of, if you don't have Deneb, you just normal summon him and put Deneb in the graveyard. He's not really good, but he's just like your beat stick of the deck. He's 1800. And fun little fact too, he can actually send any Tellarknight card from your deck to the graveyard. So yeah, he's really good, but you're really not going to send the Spell or Traps, nor do I even really play any other ones that you would want in the grave, which to be honest, I'm not even sure there are any that you even want in the grave, so I mean, I might as well just say monster at that point. But yeah, Anugalai, he's your Foolish Burial. And now the last two Tellarknight monsters I play one Vega and one Alzam. The reason you play Vega is because the loop you basically get is if you just need one Vega in circulation to do the loop, where every turn you're getting your 3 Tellarknights on the field, hopefully your Deneb, Altair, and Vega. So that gives you easy access to cards like Travere because he needs 3 Tellarknight monsters to be summoned. And Alzam is really good as a one-of because he burns your opponent for 1,000 every time he's summoned. One of the struggles that this deck always had was killing your opponent. Unfortunately, it's not fast enough to be able to make link monsters consistently to kill your opponent, like Boral Sword and stuff like that, Access Code Talker. So unfortunately, you're going to have to rely on cheese cards like Alzam to kind of knock him down to like 5 or 6,000 with his effect a couple times, and then maybe attack twice with a pretty high attack monster to win. So yeah, I definitely think that you should play him at 1. I wouldn't play any more of these. These are definitely just the one-ofs that I would stick to them at 1. I used to play Vega at 2 back in the day, but I don't think it's smart anymore. And the last monster I play is triple Honest. The reason I play this is, like I said before, this deck has a really, really tough time getting over big monsters and dealing a lot of damage to your opponent. So you want to play cards like Honest. First of all, Honest is just insane, especially when your opponent doesn't see it coming. And you can also use multiple Honest. It's not a once per turn. And you can also normal summon him, poke him, and then bounce him back to your hand. So that's really good. But yeah, this is just for catching your opponent off guard and dealing a lot of damage to them because it really has trouble getting over huge monsters. So that's always been one of the struggles of the deck, in my opinion. So that's it for the monsters. Let's get into the spell cards. So the best spell card in the deck, I think, more or less, well, maybe one more other one is pretty good over this, but generically good, is Satellarknight Skybridge. Basically, you target a Satellarknight monster you control, special summon a Satellarknight with a different name from your deck, and if you do, shuffle the targeted monster into the deck. And while the monsters are on the field that you summoned with this card's effect, you can only special summon Satellarknights. So basically, a fun little interaction that you could do is if you have a Nuclei in this card, what you can do is you can normal summon the Nuclei if you don't have access to Deneb, and then you send the Deneb to the graveyard, and then you can activate this card, targeting the Nuclei, and you shuffle the Nuclei back in and special summon the Altair. Then you use Altair's effect, and special summon it, get Deneb search, and then put the Nuclei right back in your hand. So that's definitely a cool little interaction that you could do. There's also a couple more smaller interactions that you could do with the card, but they're pretty simple, so you should be able to figure them out pretty easily as you're going throughout the deck. But yeah, I definitely really like this card. I would always play this card at 3. Unfortunately, it is a hard once per turn, but you can only activate one per turn, so if they negate the activation, you can just use another one. So yeah. So now we're going to get into the goo, I guess. One card that I play is Pot of Extravagance. The unfortunate thing is this deck is a rank 4 spam, and it's based around using your extra deck. So unfortunately, cards like this really kind of hinder you a lot in this deck, as opposed to decks such as like maybe Altergeist or something like that, or maybe Necros or anything, because it really, really is unfortunate when you banish certain Xyz monsters from your extra deck. Link monsters are just like whatever, but yeah. But the problem with this deck is it really, really does run out of gas very, very fast. So you're going to need to get into a pretty advantageous position against your opponent if you plan on winning that game. Because this deck is a trap deck, but it doesn't have the power that Altergeist does when it comes to traps, where Altergeist can special summon from the deck and they can search each other out like much, much easier than this deck can, because they're a lot more resilient to hand traps. This deck really, really struggles when it comes to having hand traps, and yeah, so, and the cards like Protocol and stuff are really good too. This deck doesn't have like a Protocol or anything, but yeah, this deck runs out of gas super fast. So you have to take that into consideration when you play this card. You're obviously want a Pot of Greed, and you're going to want to rely on your traps to keep you alive as long as possible, because your monsters unfortunately aren't going to do it. They're just going to be walls. So your monsters aren't doing anything but being walls. Your traps are the things that keep you alive. So I definitely would play triple Pot of Extravagance if you have the card. Next, I play triple Pot of Duality. Now the reason I play this card too is, 1, it doesn't conflict with Extravagance. And 2, there are times when, yes, you're just going to normal summon Deneb, or normal summon a Nuclei, Foolish Burial, or Search and pass. This deck does not have combo plays. It is a control deck. So there's 9 times out of 10, there's going to be a lot of turns where you just normal summon Deneb, get a Search and pass. Normal summon a Nuclei, Foolish Burial, and pass. So this card really is not a hindrance whatsoever. I would play this card in this deck to the end of time. I really think that it's a good card. So, and I mean, with Pot of Extravagance, you don't really want to play Pot of Desires because you don't want to draw into too many spells. You want traps. You want to draw into traps. So I would not play Pot of Desires in this deck. You can if you want to, but Extravagance doesn't let you draw. So, and then Reinforcement of the Army. Now let's get into the traps. So, Call of the Haunted. I know this is a super, super old school card, but this card has been played in Satellarknights since the dawn of Satellarknights. The reason why you play this card is because it is a continuous trap card. Now, the monster in your extra deck, which is the main monster you'll be going into, says that if he's Xyz summoned, you return all cards on the field to the hand. So let that sink in for a second. So what you're going to do is you're going to activate this card, revive your Deneb, revive all your stuff, and even if they leave the field, as long as they're not destroyed, Call of the Haunted will stay on the field. So you're going to bounce this back to your hand after it's dead, or you can use it, revive an Altair, special summon whatever other Satellarknight from your grave, overlay into a rank 4 monster. This will still stay on the field, and then you just bounce it back to your hand with Trevere. So you basically are using this because you keep using it over and over and over and over every turn. Special summoning cards like Altair is super good with this because it's not going to lock you into only being able to attack with Satellarknights for the rest of the turn because it's not even your turn. So I would obviously play this card over cards like Back to the Front and Oasis of Dragon Souls, because Oasis of Dragon Souls requires you to special summon the monster in defense position and turns it into a worm, which isn't really a huge big of a deal. But it will not allow you to revive Link monsters. So if you do manage to make Link monsters, you are actually able to bring them back with Call of the Haunted. So that's why another interaction why I like this card over Back to the Front and Oasis, and obviously Back to the Front isn't continuous, so you won't be able to use it multiple times. So, and then I'll show you like a quick little interaction. So, basically, if you end up summoning, your Trevere, say you summon your Trevere, and you're ready to bounce the field, and you have a Call of the Haunted set, you summon Trevere. Since Trevere is mandatory, he has to be Chainlink 1, so you chain Call of the Haunted as Chainlink 2, and then you revive one of your Satellarknights, and then you will also get not only the Call of the Haunted back to your hand, but you'll also get the Anukalai, or whatever Satellarknight you revive, back to your hand too. So fun little interactions. If it's still set, you could do stuff like that. So I really like that interaction. Really good with keeping hand advantage. So next, let's get into the rest of the continuous spells that I play. Play 2 Fiendish Chain. This can also be Phantom Knights of Fogblade. I just used to play Fiendish Chain in my original deck, so I kind of always liked sticking to Fiendish Chain. Phantom Knights Fogblade is a kind of a power crap version of this card, so play that card if you have it. I actually just don't have the card, plus I just like Fiendish Chain again because it was what I played before. So yeah, this is basically just target a monster on the field, negate its effects, and it cannot attack. That's really helpful that they can't attack either, because there's times where, like I said, you really just want to deal with a big monster that your opponent controls, and you're having trouble getting over it, so you need a little bit of time to access your trap cards and stuff like that. So this really helps out. So, double Fiendish Chain. And again, like I said, it's a continuous trap card, so you can keep using this card multiple times. That's one of the best things about this deck, is you just reuse your trap cards so easily. Oops, dropped a dice. The last floodgate that I play is There Can Be Only One. I did not find the space to play this card at 3, but I might try to bump it up to 3. But you're really not going to be having more than one monster on the field at a time. And the good thing about this deck too is that it's really easy for you to out your own floodgates and stuff like that. So yeah, now obviously you're gonna have to be careful, because if you have times where you have to activate this card, you're not going to be able to summon your Xyz monsters because all your monsters are warriors. So yeah, take that into consideration, but this is really good for locking your opponent out. So you're really going to want to activate this card when you only have like Trevere on the field, just to protect him. So, but I still would play this card. Next, we're going to get into the counter traps. Play triple Solemn Strike. Not much explanation here. It's Solemn Strike. It's one of the best counter traps in the game. So play that. You need to stop your opponent from doing anything, summoning monsters, using monster effects, because if you do, they're going to run you over pretty easily. And also, you play triple Solemn Judgment. Same thing. This card's always live. Stops anything except for monster effects. That's what you have Strike for. So yeah, definitely triple Solemn Judgment. And the last is like one of the best counter traps any deck can possibly ask for. Is Stellar Nova Alpha. Basically, if you control a Satellarknight monster, well, you don't even have, well, you do have to control a Satellarknight monster, but when a spell trap or monster effect is activated, you send a face-up Satellarknight monster you control to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you destroy that card, then you draw a card. So it replaces itself. So it's basically an upstart goblin, in counter trap form. So yeah, it's super good. This card is good for stopping cards like Evenly Matched, Twin Twisters, Lightning Storm, anything from completely obliterating your back row, because your back row is the heart and soul of this deck. So yeah, definitely one of the coolest trap cards for any archetype ever. So that's it for the main deck. It's 40 cards. Now let's get into the extra deck. The monster you're going to be summoning the most from the extra deck is Triple Satellarknight Rare. Now you could get away with playing 2 of this card, but you definitely have to play 3 if you're going to be playing cards like Extravagance and stuff like that. So like I said, when he's Xyz summoned, you can bounce the entire field to the hand. Non-targeting, bounce the entire field to the hand. Lets you reuse your trap cards, lets you reuse your monsters and everything. And once per turn, you can detach an Xyz material from this card and rip a card from your opponent's hand. Also, one thing to take into consideration, his effect is mandatory when he's summoned. You have to bounce the field, so yeah, think carefully. If you don't want to bounce the field, you're not going to be able to summon this guy. And one other thing is you cannot summon any other monsters the turn you summon this guy except for Satellarknight monsters. So don't get caught cheating summoning this guy after you summoned like Diamond Direwolf or something like that. So yeah, and then when he hits the graveyard, if he had Xyz material, when he hit the graveyard, you get to just revive a Satellarknight monster. And yes, he can even revive himself in defense position just to be a big wall. But he won't have any Xyz material, so you're probably not going to do that. So that's it. You can also play cards like Deltros and Constellar Diamond and Dark Satellarknight Batlamius, but I don't play those cards because you really only play those cards as one-ofs. So I figured I would just make space for other utility cards in the deck. So a couple just generic rank 4s. Abyss Dweller, Daigusto Emerald, like I said, that's why you really only need Triver in this deck, because Daigusto Emerald can put them back if you don't banish it off Extravagance. And then Abyss Dweller, and Bujintai Tsukiyomi, this card is pretty good too. Just doesn't, sometimes it can conflict with Extravagance. Just takes 2 light monsters, you could detach it, and send your entire hand to the graveyard and draw 2 cards. Minimum of 1 card, though, you have to send from your hand to the graveyard. But still very good. Just basically like a Pot of Greed. So Dweller is obvious too. Best rank 4. And we're going to get into a couple more toolbox cards. You got 1 Diamond Direwolf and 1 Castel. These are still one of the best rank 4s in the game, as far as spot removal goes. Castel spins anything, you can even book something. And Diamond Direwolf can target himself and a card in the field and just pop them. So. And the last little Xyz package that I play 1 Zodiac Chakanine and 1 Zodiac Trident. Because Chakanine just takes 2 or more level 4 monsters, so you can actually just make her, then just slap Trident on top, and then pop a card on your opponent's turn. And it'll have 3 Xyz materials, so you could use them more than once. So, might as well. Still a pretty good little 2-card package. That's also why I don't play Deltros, because this is basically like the replacement for Deltros. Because it pops during either player's turn, and Deltros can pop a card, but only on your turn. So, I have a couple links that we play. I play a Borreload and a Boral Sword. Like I said, you're really not going to be making cards like this very much, but the option is there. So if you do make them too and they get destroyed, you could just revive them with Call of the Haunted, and they're just like mini boss monsters for your deck too. And the last couple cards I play, it's kind of go well with each other. It's just the Nightmares and IP. You'll go in IP pretty easily, and then you can just make cards like Unicorn. And take into consideration too, Call of the Haunted, you could be able to use IP multiple times. That's why I like Call of the Haunted, because it can revive Link monsters. So, that is it for the deck profile, guys. Let me know what you think below. I know this is kind of a super old deck. But I wanted to kind of take a little time to make it, because it's definitely one of my favorite old decks for sure. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and maybe send me a couple texts that you guys play in the deck if you still play the deck, and let me know what your favorite deck was between Shadal's Burning Abyss and Satellarknights, because I definitely would like to know. My favorite was Satellarknights, just because of a lot of it was because of the art too. I mean, the art is pretty cool. And yes, Deneb is a girl, for anyone who didn't know. Because a lot of people thought this was a guy back in the day, but actually Deneb is like a girl. So, alright, well, thanks for watching, guys. Girsu out.